And our soloist today is Heather Rose. Welcome to Unity Radiant Light. It is Sunday, March 23rd. We're going to continue I'm Reverend Cherie Ruffo, and we're going to continue the Nag Hammadi series this morning with the Gospel of Truth. And this is our third gospel that we're actually talking about in this series, and it's a 12-week series. We expanded it out. I originally had a couple of gospels from the Gnostic scriptures per week and realized that there's so much depth to them that we needed to take a little bit longer time and peel back the layers on them. And the Gnostic scriptures is the secret knowledge. These were found in 1945 in Egypt, and they are from the Nag Hammadi Library in Nag Hammadi, Egypt. And when they were found, the archaeologists realized that they had found something really incredible. The scriptures that were never put into the Bible. 29 chapters were put into the Bible that we know. The Gospels are in there. And the accepted traditions of the Church of Nicene, or the Roman Catholic Church, was really prevalent, became really prevalent in the 4th century. And this was in 385 AD in the Council of Nicene. The decision was made what chapters would be put into the Bible and what would not. And these became known as the Gnostic scriptures, and they were not put in the Bible. And a lot of people ask the question why, and a lot of people say, well, I think it's because what it tells us, what these scriptures tell us, that they tell us that there is a power within us that makes us really powerful people, and that it was about power. And I'm not so sure that was it. As I'm going through these scriptures, and I've done this before, and every time I learn something new, I'm really wondering if maybe they just weren't understood. There's the depth to this one is even deeper than the other ones that we looked at. Now, in 20 minutes, I can't go through everything with you, but some of the ideas that are in here are actually right in alignment with our Law of One class and esoteric class, so we'll be delving in a little bit more deeply this week into it. But we're going to talk about the most important points, because I listen to the audio recording as well as read the Gnostic scriptures, and then I go in and I look to see what's been written by the experts, the religious experts, about them. And this to even listen to was 45 minutes, so I'm not going to read it to you this morning. I pulled out, I think, the most prominent concepts for us to look at. And the difference, we know that these teachings come down through the Essenes, and we talked about the Essenes last time and how they were a sect broken off from the old religion. And a lot of what their concepts are, we call New Thought today. So New Thought's really not. New Thought is really old thought. And Unity, where as a Unity Truth student, what we've studied and where Unity came from actually came through this lineage, came down through France into the Cathars, and then the thought was picked up there. One of the things that is different, because the first couple we looked at were written, they thought, by the Essenes themselves. This was written by the Valentinians. And what's different about this group is that they are a sect off of the Essenes. And they were known to, what we looked at, and a lot of what we've seen has come through France. This group was in Northwest Africa, Egypt, Asia Minor. And when, in the 4th century AD, when the Council of Nicene came together, this group was really wiped out. They left. They went into the East, a lot of them. And that's why we'll see a lot of the teachings that are here that were in the Eastern mysticism, but the Eastern, yoga, and we'll see it in Buddhism. We'll see a lot of the same concepts because they were not part of the accepted beliefs of the church at the time. So the Gnostics, we're talking about the Gnostics are different from the Christianity most of us grew up with because these are different chapters. But what I really find here is especially in this Gospel of Truth, when we look at it in the whole, is that this is a full blueprint. As I go through these different Gospels and writings, I feel more and more, and I know I've said this in other weeks too, I feel more and more like I love the Bible, and we metaphysically translate it and we use it, and it's very relevant for today. But there's the missing parts, this blueprint that tells us exactly, what to do, what we can do to help us become that best Christ we can be, to become all that we're meant to be and that we are capable of being. Jesus said, "You too can do this or something greater." We know that there's a way to do it, and there's a lot of parables in the Bible that we can look at, and metaphors, and just different ways that we're taught. But when I get into these Gnostic scriptures, there's an actual blueprint that says this is the truth, especially in the gospel of truth. This is the truth. This is what we need to do in order for us to fully awaken to this truth. And and I know that we can come to those conclusions without that, because the more that I study these scriptures, the more I'm just in awe of the Unity co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. These were not available when they started Unity or where they were teaching over those years. And yet, the truths that are within them, truth is truth, come through so vividly. And I'll talk about that as we go through some of the gospel of truth today. It was relevant. The truth is there, and it's been available. It's around us. It's been around us this whole time. So when we start talking about the gospel of truth and when we start the readings, there's one concept that keeps coming up over and over again. And that talks about us becoming what we call in unity with the Christ, but about us awakening to who we truly are. And there's a lot of time and a lot of pages devoted to this in the gospel of truth, where Jesus is talking about the fact that we are not awake, and talks about what happened to us. We came here, and at some point we fell into sense consciousness. And we have the stories from the Garden of Eden. We have all the different stories that tell us what happened. But what came out of that is a lot of laws and a lot of expressing God as away from us. So when we look at the Hebrew scriptures, nobody really talks about, there's not a lot about God within or the truths that are within. And what we come to see when we find in the gospel of truth is that one point is that we're looking in the wrong place. And we talk about that all the time in Unity. And we talk about it in Sunday services and all the classes. It becomes really apparent here. And they also give definitions of sin, definitions of redemption. We're going to go through that. And this is where I really, in some places, I stopped and I put the Unity Revealing Word, which is the dictionary that Charles Fillmore created for our metaphysical interpretations of things, and they're right side by side. And it's just amazing how beautifully they line up. So coming into the AD, when Jesus came and he had the teachings, and then went through the crucifixion and the resurrection, this group was here to learn. The disciples were teaching. Jesus came back, taught them after he had been resurrected, taught them some of these concepts. He really, as we talked about, James and Peter were two that he worked with privately, because he thought that they would grasp these concepts even more fully and deeply. And these scriptures were written, so the gospel of truth was believed to be written around the 4th century AD. So they were oral scriptures, like most of the other scriptures in the Bible, until that point. And what the first thing it does is it refutes this whole idea that God is punitive, that God, if we don't do what we're supposed to do, like children, we're going to be punished, and that we're going to burn in hell, and all of these concepts that happens. When we get into the gospel of truth, immediately the explanation is that we're asleep, and that we're not going to be harmed. But the problem is that we're caught in this dream. It talks about the dream that we've been caught in, and the dream is full of fear and ignorance and violence and all of those things. And we cannot escape the dream until we awaken. This is something we talk about a lot. And we've talked about ascension for a couple of years, so more than that now, probably a decade, and how as we ascend, we open our thoughts up, become a higher vibration, and really understand who and what we are. And it aligns perfectly with the gospel of truth that in our body, every cell is God. God is not out here, and God is not looking to punish us for things. The power that we have in this beauty is really the truth. And anytime we come back to the fear and punishment, we're caught back in the dream. Because God is love, and everything that comes from God is love. And it talks about sin, because people say, well, what about people that sin? And as the gospel truth says, sin is simply an error thought. That's what Charles Fillmore talked about in the Revealing Word. So it lined up there perfectly too. We think that we're something that we're not. And if we're caught down in materiality, and that's the most important thing, or using the words they and thinking that we're only, the world we live in is based on a lot of materialism. Now, I'm not saying never in this and do we believe that having something material is bad. It's not. It's just we can't be caught in those thoughts. We have to go to the root, the truth of who we really are. And the description in the gospel of truth says that we're in this web of forgetfulness. And we don't know our Father anymore because of it. We believe that all of these things that are around us, that are happening in the world, and remember, this was written in the 4th century. It still is relevant today, really, right? All these things that we're seeing, if we're not doing it through awakened eyes, then we're caught in this forgetfulness. And he said that Jesus enlightened people out of darkness and forgetfulness. That was his idea. And when he did, what did we see? We saw people being healed. We saw the things that the forgetfulness caused would disappear. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Because Jesus was trying to teach us and tell us that we were already everything we ever needed to be. We just had to remember who we are. I got really excited when I read this because this is everything that we've been studying, and it's everything that we've heard scientifically. We're talking about the quantum field. It's the same message, and think about it. Well, truth never changes, does it? So what does the all need if not the knowledge of God? So Jesus came forward and spoke as a teacher. He spoke this word. He refuted other teachers, and they hated him because of it, because he let people know that the power was within them, that they already had what they needed. Charles Fillmore used to say, you don't have to read another book. You don't have to study anything else. You just have to remember who you are. We come together because, and they talk about that a little further in the gospel of truth, because like-minded people, it's really great when you come together. The vibration grows, everything, we expand, and we can help each other in remembering who we are, to awakening to that. So Jesus knew that his death would reveal the light to many. They talk about it in the gospel of truth. And he entered these empty ways. He knew what was coming because he wanted to teach people this difference. He wanted them to know. And the most important thing he wanted us to know is that we weren't going to get to the truth and awaken who we are through here, the mind. It couldn't happen that way. We had to come down into our hearts and awaken through our heart consciousness. And we talk about that a lot, say we're heart-centered metaphysicians. But the way to this truth can only be through the heart. And the gospel truth reiterates that several times. The other thing is that the way to this truth cannot be through fear and darkness. It's through joy, but it's through the inner joy. So when this gospel of truth was written and these teachings were done, most people were looking outside of themselves to learn. And Jesus brought it back, this blueprint right back, and said, this power is within us. It's in our hearts. And the way to this opening, to this understanding, is not going to be from out there. It's going to start in the inner. We're going to change our inner thoughts and our feelings. And from that, we are going to expand into who we truly are. Remember, So Jesus also said that the perfection of all is in the Father. And when we receive this knowledge, they deliver to themselves what they need. So, but receiving this knowledge from within ourselves. And whoever remains ignorant of these teachings is not damned to hell. It's not damned, but they're simply in forgetfulness. Unfortunately, the cycles that come, the forgetfulness stays. But they knew that a mass awakening would happen at some point, and I do believe it's at this time. The gospel of truth is the knowledge of the eternal book is in these letters, in this gospel. These letters are the truth. These letters tell the truth. They speak and know themselves, and they know who we and what we are. And through them, people awaken to the truth. Now, can it only happen through the gospel of truth? We know it can't, because we know the Fillmores are way ahead of us at this. But they talk about the basic premises of this. And they said, for Jesus, his joy is in harmony with it. His character reveals it. His love has incarnated it, and his faith embraced it. And what this means is that through everything that Jesus was and came and taught, and everything that we can be, we can express this to others. We can be this. And when that happens, the light rises on the entire planet. So even people that are in forgetfulness will feel that light rising. And they said that we are not completely there when we have strife. I think we have a little bit of strife today. What do you think? In a lot of things that we do, it seems like everything's really polarized. And with that polarization keeps us from that awakening. So it's when we can let that go, and they talk a lot about that in the gospel of truth. If we can let that go, we will awaken, and all of that strife and those things that we see will fall away. So we can't have peace until we have it from within. We can't have a peaceful world until we become that peace ourselves. This all sounds very familiar, doesn't it? And in the gospel, it says in time that we're all going to achieve this goal. There's not one person that's going to be left out, because we're all part of God. We all have that peace, that essence of God within us. I love this parable. That there's one parable in the gospel of truth, and I'm going to read it and we'll talk about it. It says, this is like people who move from one house to another. They had jars around that were not good and broke. The owner suffered no loss, but the owner was glad these defective jars were full jars that were perfect. This is the judgment that has come from above, but judged every person found. The two-edged sword cutting on that is not merely a sound, but is sound embodied. A great disturbance occurred among the jars. Some were empty and some were filled. Some were ample and others were depleted. Some were purified and others were broken. All the realms were shaken and disturbed. They had no order or stability. Error was agitated and she did not know what to do. She lamented and attacked herself because she knew nothing of the knowledge and truth, which leads to destruction of error. Error is empty. There is nothing within her. So what this gospel is saying is that we are all in different states of readiness or asleepness. We may have a broken jar. We may have a full jar. We may have perfection. It doesn't matter, because there's no jar that's less than the other. So if there's one jar out there that's broken, then the Father will work to heal that. And the Father is this God source. So there's nobody that's being cast off. There's nobody that will be left behind. There's nothing that this God energy that we talk about is just the desire for all of us to recognize the wholeness. Because even if the jar has the appearance of being broken, it can never be broken. We might think that we are less than we are. But the truth is so great and so huge that it's oftentimes hard for us to accept about ourselves. That truth lies within each one of us. It's there, and it's just waiting to be recognized. You don't have to be a certain religion for it. You don't have to read a certain book for it. You don't have to do certain things. You just have to understand and accept who and what you are. And sometimes that can be the hardest thing to do. And what happens when we recognize this truth? This gospel goes on for quite a while because it talks about the truth of, they call the Holy Father, this God source. The truth is that it's all good, all loving. We recognize that. Joe opened up the service with a prayer, with the one presence and one power in the universe. That's what the gospel of truth is talking about. And it talks about people that have understood, that are awakening to this. It talks about us, as we are that we're in a long sleep. And that as we awaken to this truth of who we are able to, we become more mature. We understand that a lot of what we see is illusion. And our lives change. All the lives on the planet change when we do this because we come from the oneness. But we don't have to wait for everybody to wake up at the same time, because this is this is the process that we're in. And as we understand this, and as we embrace the truth of ourselves, our lives change. What comes from this oneness? They talk about manifestation. We are manifestors. The question is, where are we manifesting from? As we awaken to the truth of who we are, the power of the spoken word becomes stronger. When we state something, when we intend something, it is much stronger than it was when we were asleep. So these are really important things. It says, until the truth is known, the one who is ignorant knows nothing and does nothing, because they don't know the truth about themselves. So each realm is revealed through this truth, who we are. And our roots are here right now in this moment. We can only be in this now moment. So the premise is that when we know the truth, we move into this now and present moment. Our abilities, our manifestation, the creation from within our lives is real, because we know that we are whole and perfect. Any of this terror and confusion that we see is not of God. The gospel talks about this a lot. So in this ignorance of being asleep, what we can do is plant these roots of truth where we are. I'm not saying that we have to go out and spread the truth. You can do whatever you want. That's fine. But we can stand in this truth and shine the light, knowing that this truth is exactly who and what we are. And the gospel goes on to say, once the truth, the awakening happens, all the illusion disappears. It dries up. It's not about God being punitive or anything like that. So a lot of people received this light back then, and still continue to receive it today, through what we call all different paths. Every path, I do believe, leads to God. I think some are longer than others because people are asleep. So as we shake this illusion off, we know that this word, this became word in flesh. The word creates and manifests. One of the things that I'm going to close with is the talking about the gospel truth. He talks about the things that we gain as we awaken. And anybody studying the 12 powers is going to smile, because there was faith and there was strength. There's wisdom. There's understanding, will. All of the 12 powers, I went through it and I found it in different forms, and they may have used different words, but they were talking about these activation centers that we've learned from unity, that we develop these powers in our lives and it leads to our awakening. One of the things at the end of it said, that talked about Jesus was the shepherd who left 99 sheep behind. They didn't stray, but he went in search of the one who was lost. So as long as someone is asleep, there's always going to be the searching. These souls aren't going to be cast out or forgotten, because the importance of us all awakening. And I love that. There was a few things it said, and we're going to do in our meditation, we're going to do some of these concepts. A couple of things he says that, and he talked about feeding the hungry, giving rest to the weary, awaken those who wish to arise, and rouse those who sleep. Basically, ministerial school, they tell us that it's my job to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable, which means help you awaken to the truth of who you are. It also said, which was kind of funny, it said, do not return to eat where you have vomited. I thought that was great. Don't be moth-eaten. Don't be worm-eaten. What they're saying is, as you awaken to the truth, don't return to sleep. Take these truths and run with them and create the life that you're meant to create. They talked about the devil, but in the same thoughts in the revealing word. The devil is just the mass of thoughts of mass consciousness. That's the error state. It's a place of consciousness. So it's not about us, about heaven or hell. It's about us changing our consciousness. It says, do not strengthen what stands in your way or what is collapsing to support it. Let it go. As you awaken, just let it go. Brings up the song from Elsa, right? Frozen. I have a 3.5-year in the house, so I hear that a lot. But we have to let those truths go. To look at the lawless, where it seems like people are going, a little crazy right now, just to know that people are asleep. They're caught in this web. But for each of us that awaken, we lend the strength to the light on the planet that helps us to awake. This raises our vibration, it raises their vibration. And it goes back to what we've talked about. Oh, here's the Gnostic Bible for anybody who's been asking me about what I've been reading. It goes back to a couple phrases, and this is one that we know from Moses. I am that I am. The truth was there so clearly that day. I am is God. Was us, that I am God. We are the same. It's in every cell of our body. And I know I repeat that all the time. And I'm going to keep repeating it because it is the truth. This is what we're awakening to. Is this God essence in our house, in ourselves. That's why when we have the healing Sundays, which we're going to be adding on to, we're recognizing the wholeness. When we pray for people, they said in prayer requests, we do it from a place of wholeness because we know you are whole and complete as you are, no matter what outer appearances may be. And it goes back to science. We've talked about, we're studying right now in the esoterics class, we're looking at the 12 levels of the DNA and what it means. And Greg Braden, we talked about that for a long time. The message they found when they looked at the elements charts, when they looked at the oldest Jewish book on the planet, there's one thing that's in every cell of our body, in every cell of anything. God eternal within the body. God eternal is within us in every cell. The gospel of truth really reiterated that, really supported that. And this is something that has been out there and was hidden for so long. But the truth really never can be. We've seen it in the mystery schools. We've seen it in the esoteric teachings. And now we see it with science. The truth is truth. And the gospel of truth gives us that perfect blueprint of what we need to do. So I'm so glad you're on this journey with me. I'm excited to continue it. And I'm finding that as I'm going through these again, I'm reading new things that I've never seen, new things that I've never seen before, because my consciousness is in a different place than it was when I've studied it. So I look forward to many more weeks of our journey with this. And what I'd like to do is move into meditation so we can awaken to some of this truth in a more full and more fully, but also together, because we know that Jesus said, where two or more are gathered, there I am. Thank you, and I love you. With our mics muted, we're going to say our meditation affirmation. I am open and receptive to the spirit of truth, healing what needs to be healed and revealing what needs to be revealed. And there's the gospel of truth right there, isn't it? Right there in front of us. So I just invite you to close your eyes, your outer eyes, to just sit in a relaxed position. And as we do, just invite you to take a nice deep breath in, all the way down. You can push your stomach out and release. Next breath in, all the way down, and just release what you no longer desire. Our next breath in, deep breath in. We just release anything that no longer serves us. And as we're breathing with this, we can take a breath in and just breathe out as you're comfortable on this truth. If I've afflicted you in any way today, you can go ahead and release it. If these thoughts feel conflicting because maybe what you've grown up with, we can just breathe it in and release it in a very gentle way. And as we breathe in, we say, God is, and we release with I am. And we sink a little lower, our energy going from our minds into our heart center. We just sink a little lower, feeling that depth of consciousness. Our heart's opening to these truths. If there's any part of us that's not awakened, we set that intention now for that great awakening. I am awake. I see with the eyes of truth. I love with the heart of God. I am truth. I am truth. I am whole. I am already complete. And as I say I am, just fill in those statements. What is it that you are? I am. I am. I am love. That love is all that there is, so how could I ever be anything else? And we recognize that love and that divinity in every person, every creature. We know that this everything comes from the God mind. And as we take our next deep breath in, we just ask to gently start releasing, set that intention to release the ideas that we may have that can't be from the gospel of truth. They cannot be truth. If you have thought of yourself as anything less than this perfection, you thought of yourself as limited, just invite you in the silence, before we go into the silence, to just release it. As Myrtle Fillmore said when she was healed, as a child of God, I did not inherit illness. As a child of God, what did you not inherit? Poverty, fear, lack of love, lack of peace. And as you release this and breathe this in, we're going to release these things and breathe them out. As we breathe in the silence, we're not going to do this consciously, but just allow yourself to be filled with light. The gospel of truth talks about us being light beings. Allow yourself to be filled with this light, kind of like a lighthouse that's having its windows cleaned. This light gets brighter and brighter in the silence. I am the pure essence of God. Feel that realization. Every cell in my body is perfect and whole. I am health. I am prosperity. Every area in my life is prosperity. I know I'm a manifester. I am joy, that inner joy that can never be challenged by anything, that inner joy of knowing the truth of who and what I am is always present. And therefore I am peace. I am love. That is my essence. I come from that substance. I am. And I am so grateful for these truths, for the eloquence that I'm formed, for the truth of who I am. To know who and what I am and what I stand for gives me joy beyond measure. I am so grateful. And as we stand in this gratitude and know who and what we are, we hold the light for those who need to heal. We hold it for the areas of the world that need peace, shining the light to help people to awaken. I am. And for any prayer requests we have that you'd like to share with us, we're going to put them into the prayer field right now as you share them. This is something better, God. We know. As we stand in this light of truth, we say thank you. And we are so grateful for Jesus, our way shower, the other masters and teachers who have come to teach us this truth. We just say thank you and know that all is done and all is well. And so it is.